This past Wednesday, most of us got a smudge on our foreheads and heard the sobering words, "Remember, you are dust, and to dust you shall return." Now, that's a strange thing to say and to do because it essentially means, hey there, you're going to die. Now, that's a real exciting and attractive message, isn't it? That pulls them all in. I mean, and if you just want to try it out, turn to your neighbor and say, "You're going to die." Go ahead, try it. And then smile and say, "Yes, I am. I am." Well, death is not something we usually like to talk about, certainly not our own. But it's a topic we'd rather avoid. But that's the message of Ash Wednesday and of Lent. That someday, sometime when we least expect it, each of us is going to die. That's why we prayed today in the Great Litany, "Good Lord, deliver us from dying suddenly and unprepared." Are we prepared? Are we ready to die? Or are we even ready to talk about getting ready to die? Now, maybe it would be easier to talk about if we knew a little bit more about death and how it works and what to expect when it comes. Wouldn't it be nice if someone would die and go there and check it out for us and then come back and tell us what it's like? Oh yeah, somebody did that, didn't they? That would be that Messiah guy who died on a cross to experience death for all of us, went and was dead, and came back to tell us about it. That's what it's about. And that's what Peter is talking about today in his letter when he writes, "Jesus was put to death in the body, but made alive in the spirit, through which he went and preached to the spirits in prison." Wait a minute. Who are the spirits in prison that Jesus preached to while he was dead in the body? And how in the world does somebody preach when they're dead? Well, they don't, at least not in this world. Now, remember in the Apostles' Creed at baptisms when we say, "I believe Jesus suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, died, and was buried." We all know that part. But then there's that strange line, "He descended to the dead." Now, what does that mean? Well, that's what Peter's talking about today, that Jesus, while he was dead between Good Friday afternoon when he died on the cross and Easter morning when he rose again, that he was not just dead, cold, lying in the tomb. His body was, but his spirit descended into the realm of the dead, where he preached to all the folks who were there. Now, some Christians say he went into hell itself. Others say he was simply wherever it is that dead people are between the time they die and Jesus comes back and they rise again to meet him. But whichever way we understand it, and the Bible is simply not clear about that, ever since Jesus rose again, Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic people say in the Apostles' Creed, Jesus descended to the dead, which makes it part of our tradition also as Anglicans. In the 39 articles of religion, which were compiled in the late 1500s to define who we are as Anglicans, and that you can find in the back of the prayer book if you want to, Article 3 reads, "As Christ died for us and was buried, so also it is to be believed that he went down into hell." Okay, but what does that mean? And why would Jesus do that? Descended to the dead simply means Jesus really died. When they took him down from the cross, wrapped his body in linen, laid him in the tomb, rolled the stone in front of the entrance, he was dead. D-E-D, dead. Really dead. All the way dead. Stone cold dead. He wasn't just pretending. He didn't pass out and the Roman soldiers were too dumb to notice and the cool damp air revived him. Jesus really died. That's what descended to the dead means. Jesus really died. But he's God. Why would he do that? And why is it important? Well, there are at least 3 reasons. Number 1, by dying and descending to the dead, Jesus finished becoming fully human. Now, we know that Jesus is completely God, but he's also completely human, which means as he lived, he experienced and felt everything that we ever will. Conception, gestation, being squeezed out of his mother's womb into life, the warmth of family and friends, the pains of growing up, the loneliness and the frustration of being misunderstood and rejected and unloved, and finally the sting of death. If Jesus didn't die, he would have missed an inescapable part of being human. And as a human, he felt everything we feel about life, and he felt everything we feel about death, which would include uncertainty and even some fear. You say, but he's God. He knows about death. That's true. As God, Jesus had seen countless people die, but he'd never done it himself. So as a human, he felt everything that we do about death, the uncertainty of what it's going to be like, wondering if we'll face it bravely, the reluctance to let go of the life that we know to enter into a different kind of life that we're not sure about, and the hope that death is indeed not the end. Jesus felt everything that we do before death, and he felt everything we'll feel when death comes to us, fighting for breath as he was on the cross until the time came to surrender, and he said, "Into your hands I commend my spirit. It is finished." Jesus really died so that he can assure us, I know your feelings. I know your fears. I know your concerns. And you are not going to die alone. I am with you always. I will be with you when your time comes. I walked into death myself, and I will walk with you into it when it's your turn. And I will get you through. I've been there. I've been dead. It's not that bad. And it's not the end. Jesus says that with perfect confidence because he really died and then really rose again. The disciples didn't steal the body. The women didn't forget where his tomb was and come back on Easter to the wrong one that was empty. It wasn't wishful thinking. It's not a myth or a legend or something the disciples made up to impress people. Now, in case you don't know, the only thing the disciples got for telling people that Jesus rose again was martyrdom. All 12 were arrested. 11 were executed. And the Romans tried to kill the Apostle John, the last one. They tried to kill him twice, but he wouldn't die, so they stuck him off on a rocky island where he wrote the last book of the Bible, Revelation. Why would those 12 guys stick by their story at the cost of their own lives unless it's really true? Jesus descended to the dead in order to become fully human, and then he rose again to show us that we will too. Why else would he do that? Well, to beat death and the devil. We heard today how Jesus was in the wilderness 40 days being tempted by Satan. And at the end of those 40 days, Jesus looked him in the eye and said, "You go to hell." And the devil said, "Why don't you come with me?" And Jesus said, "Later, dude." You see, death and the devil had stalked Jesus his whole life, beginning with the soldiers who killed all of those little boys in Bethlehem, continuing with the devil in the wilderness in the story we heard today, and then the angry mobs who wanted to stone him or throw him off of a cliff, and finally with the outraged religious leaders who got together with the Roman governor and nailed him to a cross. Jesus began and ended his life on earth fighting and beating death and the devil. Even though on that first Good Friday it looked like death might win. But on the cross, it only looked like death won. Just as death reached out its cold, clammy claws to grab hold of Jesus, Jesus grabbed death by the throat and pulled him to him. It's like when my little grandsons sneak up behind me by the swimming pool and they want to push me in. And right before they do that, I grab them and I pull them in as I go also. That's what Jesus did. And then while he was in the realm of the dead, he ran around, opened all the prison doors, and set everybody free. The letter to the Hebrews puts it like this: Jesus shared in our humanity so that by his death he might destroy him who holds the power of death, that is the devil, and free those who all their lives were held in slavery by their fear of death. We don't have to be afraid of death anymore because Jesus descended to the dead to beat death and the devil, and he came back from the dead to prove that death does not win. And finally, as we heard from Peter today, Jesus descended to the dead to preach to those who have died, especially those who've never heard the good news that God loves them and wants them in his family. God's intention is for us to show and tell the world how much God loves them. We, the church, are God's plan for getting out the good news. But if we fail to do that, whether it's our fault or our negligence or simply because we didn't do a good job of it or because we missed somebody, God is not going to abandon people to death because we didn't tell them about the way, the truth, and the life. Jesus himself meets each person who crosses over from life into eternity. And when that happens, Christians are going to say, You, I've been waiting for you all my life. I wanted to know you. I wanted to be with you, and now I'm home. And people who have never heard about Jesus or never heard about him accurately, but spent their lives seeking truth, are going to see Jesus and say, You, all my life, I was looking for you. Who are you? And Jesus is going to reach out his hand and introduce himself to them and welcome them into the kingdom. And the people who spent their lives serving only themselves and feeding their own hungers and hormones and rejecting whatever they heard or felt or knew about God will say, You, not you. All my life I tried to stay away from you, and here you are. Now what? And with great love and a broken heart, Jesus will say, You didn't want anything to do with me in life, and I love you too much to force you to stay with me forever in death. Depart from me to the place prepared for you. Nobody goes to hell because God had a bad day, got mad, and sent them there. Nobody goes to hell because of an accident of where or when they were born, or the family or the religion that they grew up in, or because no one ever told them about Jesus. God loves people too much to let that happen. Hell is for people who want nothing from God, and anybody in hell chooses to be there. This past Ash Wednesday, we heard, Remember you are dust, and to dust you shall return, which means someday each of us is going to die. Are we ready? We can be. Because we have someone who died, who descended to the dead, who beat death and the devil, and came back to tell us, Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. I've been dead. It's not bad. And I will be with you when your time comes. Don't be afraid of death because it won't kill you.